A classic from the sewers returns. This is your look at the new Super 7 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Ultimates Raphael. Raphael is a hothead and the most opinionated, impulsive, and restless Ninja Turtle. Raphael loves nothing more than to test himself in battle and trains for sheer enjoyment. He's usually the one to leap into action, and it's nearly impossible to get him to back down. Before we get a closer look at the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Ultimates Raphael, and let me just say he lives up to that name, the first thing we're obviously going to do is figure out how tall he actually stands. So I'm going to take the tape measure right to what I feel is the top of his head, right there. Stopping the tape measure. You're looking at a figure standing 6.2 inches in height. Let's quickly switch that for people that follow, of course, their figures and collectibles in centimeters. Then you're looking at the figure being almost 16 centimeters, 15.9 to be exact. Now, what I thought would be a fun comparison with the Ultimates Raphael is to move him over. Obviously, we all know this is based on the original Playmates toy line. I figured I'd bring in the original Raphael, released by Playmates Toys. No, it's not the original Raphael released in the 80s. Instead, this is the follow-up re-release classic collection that Playmates Toys released in the United States. Here in Canada, it was distributed and released by Spin Master Toys. But it was my opportunity to get these original turtles sealed. And though the temptation has fallen me a couple of times to want to open these up and get them on display, I've resisted the temptation because I definitely knew I was going to be regretting it later by opening these up. As you can definitely see, there's very much a lot of inspiration cues taken from the original Playmates run of Turtles toys. You'll see even more so when we look at the accessories that come included with the brand new Ultimates Raphael. And let me tell you, Super 7 calling this the Ultimates line isn't that far of a stretch, really, when you look at the vast amount of accessories that come included with Raphael, and all the other turtles that we're going to be having a look at in upcoming videos as well. Let's kind of go back in time a little bit and have a look at some of the more retro-inspired accessories. The one that most people will recognize as, oh, I remember these, coming included with the original Playmates line, is the quote-unquote rack of weapons. You can see all the original weapons that would have come included with the Playmates release of Raphael gets a new retro treatment presented here by Super 7. In fact, let me bring in the packaging again so you guys can see the difference between the two. Short of me just flipping it around, getting it as closely accurate as I possibly can. All the placement of the weapons is exactly in the same place. The Sai at the top, you can see the sword in the middle, the shurikens on the side, are all very faithfully recreated on the new Ultimates release. I think that's absolutely awesome. Now, I would be compelled to probably want to start taking these off, but I mean, all the other things that he comes included with, though I do like the fact that there's that nod to the original classic line, I don't know if I want to actually take these off. I feel like I want to keep them all intact, but like the original toy line, it would just involve you just wiggling this off, freeing it from the plastic tray, and then you would have, of course, those vintage-style weapons for Raphael. It's a really nice fan nod to the original toy line. I love the fact that Super 7 would have done that. Now, you can move these, of course, to the side, for the time being, of course, because he does actually have all of those accessories that we just looked at on that tray with their own standalone releases. For example, looking at the shurikens, I suppose I could probably bring the tray back so you guys can see the difference between the two. You do get yourself a silver, more updated look at the shuriken, the two that would be attached to the side of the tray. You get two of these that can be displayed in the figure's hand, 1 and 2. They're very nicely painted, I must say, in the silver finish, really giving you a nice updated look to the original toy accessories. Speaking of the original toy accessories as well, Raphael, of course, would not be Raphael without his pair of Sai, and he gets two of them. It's not size, it's Sai for 2 of those. He gets 2 versions of these, actually. The ones that we're looking at right now is a slight upgrade from the more brown ones that we just looked at on the tray. And again, these are all molded in a very nice, almost pearlesque silver plastic. As you can see as well, the handle have been painted, both of them have been painted in black. Now, obviously, you can fit this in either one of his hands, or like the original vintage toy line, there's nice convenient slots located in the front. Just go ahead and take the Sai, slide them down, and fit them into the front holstered belt of Raphael's sash here. You can see also the rather familiar Raphael R there in the middle. That will be, of course, one of the signatures of not only the original Playmates line, but also the Ultimates that Super 7 is going to be doing. So I really like the fact that they include that. If you do want even more a modernized take of the Sai, then they also include these ones right here. Sadly, this one is slightly bent, just the way it came out of the tray. I'm going to see if I can maybe heat those up and put them back in proper placement. But just go ahead and take the one that I just put in Raphael's belt there. You can see that these ones aren't that much different from one another, but like the shurikens, are treated to this just brilliant looking silver paint that they've added to the plastic. Doesn't seem like anything has changed between the two. In fact, I hold them this way so you guys can see the difference in handles. It looks like the handles are also identical to one another. Just this one gets a nice, more cleaner, shinier looking paint job. Like also with the original toy line, he gets 2 push daggers of various different sizes and shapes. I do like the fact that they brushed the handles of these with 2 colors of brown. A more lighter color of brown, and then over top of that, more of a darker caramel brown, just to make all those details on the handles certainly stand out. Now again, these are all painted in that real exquisite looking silver that we looked at the Sai, and we looked at the shurikens. They all have that same follow over color. The neat thing about these as well is if you take the figure and you spin him around, located on the back is a really nice convenient place to store at least one of them. There's not enough clearance, unfortunately, to fit both. If you are trying to fit both, you're going to be it's going to be real tight quarters for both. But it definitely houses at least the larger one. And it's a nice, smart place to put it when it's obviously not in Raphael's hands. I do really like the fact that he comes included with those as well. Similar upgrades, he also gets himself that curved blade sword that would have also been, let's go back to that tray. You'll also see, again, it's a upgrade to the one that we get on the wood tray. I do really like the fact that he includes it. I seldom really display any of my original vintage Turtles toys, at least when I had them, because I've sold them since. I never really displayed any of the Turtles with the tray accessories, but I always, again, love the fact that they get them, and I always love the fact that when it certainly comes to the Ultimate releases, that Super 7 includes them in the first place. Would I ever display this with Raphael? Not necessarily, no. But I do like the fact that they include him in the first place. Let's move on to some other interesting things that comes included with Raphael. Why not? A slice of pepperoni pizza. There's nothing real funky about this pizza. No unnecessary anchovies or pineapple. Blah! But just enough. It looks like you got double cheese. As you can see, it's all ooey gooey and dripping off the end. And it does have a good sufficient amount of pepperoni slices. 2.5, I suppose, to be exact, with some sauce right underneath the cheese. I mean, the amount of detail and care that they just put to the slice of pizza. You can see how they've even finished the bottom end of it to really make it look like a real slice of pizza. Really nice touch. Also nice touches that come included with the figure. He gets 2 variations of the turtle communicator. One the more compact variety, and one completely opened up. Where this deviates, of course, from the original Turtles cartoon, is the Turtles cartoon would have had this shell done in red, or in green. In the case here of the Ultimates, they're going the route of red, really separating itself from the Turtles cartoon. I like the fact that they got like the little purple section there in the opened area of the communicator. And you've got some red dials, some green dials, and yellow dials, all making up the additional colors that they have applied to it. Really nice touches. You can see there's the backs of them right there. Very, very nice the fact that they would include those. And then, of course, we come with a whole bunch of hands. Raphael comes with a lot of hands, actually. Let's have a look at those right now. You're probably also seeing that there's a head just lurking off on the far distance. We'll have a look at that in a second. But Raphael also comes with a ton of interchangeable hands. Currently in the sockets of the forearms that we're looking at right now, I've got just the defaulted clamp gripping hands that would have came with the figure when you first get them out of the packaging. But if you do want to break things up and change things up, He comes with a couple of gestured hands. I just want to also draw your attention to the amount of detail that they put just to the hands themselves, going the far reaches of painting the fingernails as something they didn't really even need to do, but I appreciate the fact that they did. I do like the fact that they did give us these gestured hands, but there's a couple of variations as well. He's got a couple of gripping hands as well. This would actually be ideal to feed the sai through. So, for example, if you take the sai right here, you can feed it through the top here. Now, the only thing you will want to be careful of is getting it around the thumb. But you can actually have Raphael looking like he's holding the sai with the prongs on either sides of his hands. And that's a nice touch as well. And then rounding out the rest of it, just comes with another couple of gripping hands as well. But again, like the amount of detail, the texturing, if you can see, hopefully, if I get close enough, the amount of texturing that they did just to the nail themselves, or each one of those nails, the amount of detailing that they have to each one of those nails is really, really good. Okay. So the last thing that Raphael comes included with, and I feel for this, I'm going to go ahead and take the sai off his one side. I'm going to go ahead and take the push dagger off the back here. And I just also want to show you the variations in heads that he comes included with as well. Now, the head stocked out of box clearly looks to be more the closer nod to the original Playmates Turtles toy. And definitely very reminiscent of that original toy line. But the figure also does come included with this head sculpt as well. Now, you could say that this is a more updated, detailed head sculpt to the one that we originally get with the figure. I mean, in a way, when I'm looking at this particular portrait, it bears a bit more of a resemblance, I feel, to the comic run, the original comic run where all the turtles had red bandanas. It does then ask the question, I really only have Raphael so far, but I'm wondering if all the other Turtles figures will have a more modern looking head sculpt with their corresponding color, or if they're all going to go the route and get a red bandana version as well. That will be interesting to see with the other releases. If you spin the figure's head sculpts around, you'll also see one thing that's different between the two. Not only is just the sculpting of the head, but also the length of bandana tied at the back. It's much shorter on the original defaulted head sculpt, much longer on this one right here. To swap the heads out, but the only thing I would say is difficult on this particular figure. You'll see that they've allotted for a lot of clearance when you look at the under cavity. This is attached by ball joint, but to change the head sculpt off, I find it's really difficult. You really have to apply some significant pressure to pull this off a rather long-stemmed ball joint. And equally so, I find it's difficult then to put the new head sculpt in place, because you really have to apply a lot of pressure to do it. Too much pressure, but I guess when you do it, the more often you do it, it probably becomes a lot easier as you're freeing that socket joint. Again, there's the difference between the two. More purists probably would be going the route of this looking head sculpt, simply just because it bears more the resemblance of the original Playmates line. But there's something also to be said about this head sculpt, which I really think is not only an update to the one that we just looked at, but it definitely still gives me that vibe of the original comic run, and still the original Playmates run, just slightly more detailed. That being said, let's get a closer look at the figure as a whole. I know even though technically I went away from the more retro-designed Raphael head sculpt, but we're going to go with this one for the time being. You can see all the detail work that they added to the neck. Yes, again, looking at the head is a lot more open. I don't know if they just did that for when it comes to the posability of the figure. It means you get a much broader range of what you can actually do with the head sculpt. If that socket or this open area of his head was too close to his neck, you wouldn't be able to, like, for example, do that. You wouldn't be able to tilt these back and forth. So there's probably the reasoning why they made it so open the way that they did and kept the neck so skinny. But I do like the wrinkles that they added to the neck. Equally so, of course, when you look at the shell, you get a lot of those original nods to the Playmates line. The big bright R, for example, the slots where you put the sai. If you spin it around and back, we've already looked at that. That's where the push dagger goes. But a lot of good detail that they put into the shell. Slashes and cuts, as you can see, embedded into the surface of the shell. They've kept the plastic generally about the same color as the original Raphael figure. In some places, you'll see that there's some additional shading that they've added to around the areas of his muscles. But I do like these little wrinkles that they put around areas like the top of his legs, where it would be going into the shell. The areas around his knee pads, for example, where that might be a little tighter. All things that upgrade this from its original Playmates run. I do really love the design of this one. I'm really smitten by this line so far, and definitely excited to get more of these as they progressively release the next waves after this. Having a look at the articulation on Raphael, his head rotates all the way around, whatever head you decide to go with. And again, I think, the reasoning why they left so much of an open chasm inside was simply just, again, so you can really get some good ranges when it comes to his head sculpt, like being able to do that, for example, being able to shift the head back and forth and get those off-kiltered angles on his head. It's probably one of the reasonings why they did do that. The shoulders are slightly tight, but you still can pull off a 90-degree angle bend. The arms rotate all the way around. In addition to that, he has a swivel at the bicep, a single hinge on the elbow, and that single hinge also allows the forearm to rotate. In addition to that, whatever hand you decide to go with, hands rotate all the way around. You can hinge them also back and forth. For the legs, let's just have a look at these legs. If you can see underneath this, and I'm hoping the camera's doing justice to this, there's a swivel on the waist. You can rotate the waist back and forth like that, and a slight pivot back and forth also. In addition to that, the legs split out. There's a swivel on the top cut of the thigh. You can move the legs forward and back. He has a single hinge on the knee, which allows the lower leg also to rotate. And he also has articulation up and down on the leg, and you can also pivot those feet back and forth. Get a good look again at the turtle detailing on the toes, including with the big giant toenails as well. As a kid, I got knee-deep into collecting the TMNT figures from Playmates Toys, and whether I had weekly allowance money or I had my newspaper route money, without fail, I was going to my Toys R Us or a place here in Canada called Wolco. It was always heavily stocked with brand new turtle figures. And at the price point that they were offering them for, it was easy for a kid to go into the store and out of the store with 2 or 3 brand new turtle figures in hand. Probably one of the reasonings why my collection got so out of control, I could easily stretch my collection of turtle figures from one end of the bed to the other. Over the years, unfortunately, I've made poor decisions in life, and I ultimately sold a lot of my basic turtles. Now, since then, Playmates has released over the years classic collections or reissues of the original Turtles toys. And those are fine and good, hitting that bit of nostalgia that I had as a kid. But ultimately, I'm never going to really open these. I want to really keep them sealed in their plastic prison because ultimately, if I take them out of the packaging, what I'm going to be faced with is a Raphael that only has 5 points of articulation. And yes, that's usually the case when it comes to vintage retro toys. They're going to be limited on articulation. So much like other turtle fans out there, we've been asking for a company to step up and give us those vintage turtles with sort of a brand new fresh coat of paint, so to speak. Step in Super7, giving us this brand new line of ultimate TMNT figures. And the one that we're looking at in this case is Raph, but across the board, what we have been getting from Super7 is exactly the thing we've been asking for from day one, upgrades to those original Turtles figures, giving us the much needed articulation, additional accessories, and in the case here of Raphael, a brand new head sculpt as well. Now, ultimately, when it comes to displaying the Super 7 version of Raphael, I'm still probably going to revert back to displaying him with the retro head sculpt just because it looks more like the original Playmates line. But I'm just happy the fact that Super 7 stepped up to the plate and gave us these awesome brand new retro-inspired turtles. Pretty close to the original line, with obviously the much-needed upgrade when it came to the paint, the sculpt, and more importantly, the articulation. These are absolutely awesome figures, and if you're a big fan of the original TMNT run from Playmates Toys, you're definitely going to want to be picking these ones up and adding them to your collection. Today we were having a look at the Super 7 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Ultimates, and this was Raphael. Very, very cool. If you guys are liking the content you're seeing on this channel and you haven't yet done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn the bell notification on. And keep the bookends of your nose peeled, that would be your eyes, as we're going to be having a look at more of the Super 7 Ultimate Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figures in upcoming videos. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.